What is up guys, I'm Ettore and today I'm going to show you how I made this concrete side table right here. First things first, I want to say I got this idea from Allie Beckwith. I've been wanting to do a cement skim coating project for a while and I saw her video of how she made her concrete coffee table and I thought it looked sick, but I already really like my coffee table that I have currently, so I decided to build a side table instead. Most of the project remained the same, I just changed my dimensions to make it taller instead of flatter and less wide. I've also seen Modern Builds do some projects with quick wall cement that look really cool. He made a planter and other things, so I thought it was a good time to dive into this project. Before we get started, I also want to give a quick shout out to John, Mauricio, Adi, and Ita. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's just jump into the materials. For this project, I used 2 boards of 2 foot by 4 foot MDF, that is 1/8 inch. I also used 2 2x2s. I also had to pick up 2.5 inch screws and 1 inch screws, quick wall cement, cement spreaders, a tub, an Olympic WaterGuard waterproofer. Now that we gathered all of our materials, we're going to start by taking some measurements. We're going to take the 2 foot by 4 foot MDF and we're going to measure 16 inches along the side that is 48 inches long. At the end, we will have 4 16 by 24 inch sides of this side table. We're also going to have to cut one of the pieces into 16 by 16 to create the top. We will also have to cut the 2x2s to make the structure for the frames. And this consists of 4 pieces that are 24 inches long and 8 pieces that are 13 inches long. And this 13 comes from 16 minus 1.5 minus 1.5 from the 2x2. Since this is all going to be covered by cement later, it doesn't have to be perfectly straight and any blemishes or mistakes that you make will be covered up, so it doesn't really matter. So you don't really have to stress too much, but it's still a good practice to keep straight cuts and do good measuring. Using a speed square has really sped up my measuring and I would recommend you get one if you haven't already. Now that we have all of our measurements done, we can get into the cutting process. I don't have a miter saw or anything like that, and I've just been using my circular saw for everything, and so far it works. You know, as I mentioned, that these don't need to be perfectly straight or anything, so it's been fine. I also like to stack my plywood on top of each other because then I can make sure that both of them are the same lengths. Then I went ahead and I cut all the sides for the frames out of the 2x2. I can probably stack these next to each other to make it go by faster, but I decided not to. Lastly, I had to cut the top for the side table and I used one of the 16 by 24 inch pieces to do that. Now that we have all of our pieces cut out, we can start assembling the frame and the side panels. So we're going to start off by building the frame. This is made out of 2x2s. I decided to put the side supports inside the vertical supports. I figured that was a pretty easy way to do it and this won't be bearing a ton of weight, so it doesn't really matter if it's not the sturdiest. I also decided just to put 1 screw in each side because the 2x2s were a little tricky to get 2 screws into, and I'm going to do cross screwing later, so I didn't want to hit another screw or anything like that, so I just used 1 screw to secure each corner. And this will all be covered in cement later, so I just tried to build this frame as quickly as I could. And I made sure to drill pilot holes before doing anything because I did see some cracking when I tried to jump straight into it. So I started off by building the squares that are essentially 16 inches by 24 inches. I built 2 of these and then I started linking them together. Now I brought the other square or rectangle and then I joined the horizontal supports. Just screw them in, and in a couple more screws we will have our frame fully finished. The next step will be to add the panels to this, which will also add some structure, so I wasn't too concerned about only having 1 screw. And there we go, it is fully done. Alright, now that our frame is constructed, we can jump into adding the side panels to each of the sides. Even though a cube has 6 sides, I only have 5 side panels because we will not be adding one to the bottom. So we will just be adding one on the 4 sides of the side table and then the top panel we built. My order for doing this was I just did all the side panels first, one by one. I put 2 screws on each side and these screws are 1 inch long. And then after that I just flipped it over and went on to the next side. It did get a little messy because I was still drilling pilot holes, which creates a little bit of sawdust. And I did all of this inside. I don't have like a workshop area, so I just did it all in my living room. So I laid down a tarp because this project does get very messy. If you can do it outside or in a garage or in a basement or in a workshop, I would definitely recommend you do it there instead. You'll see later it gets a lot messier. After I finished all the sides, I was able to move on to the top, which is just 16 inches by 16 inches. And there we go. After this point, we have finished our box, which we will cover with cement. I put it next to my couch to see how it would look, and I really like the look of it. I think it's the right height and everything, and I feel comfortable jumping into the cement portion of this. So as I mentioned earlier, we will be using the quick wall cement. This cement is like normal cement, except it has these fiberglass little hairs that really help a lot with the structure of it all. I didn't realize that this came with that, and I wasn't sure what it was at first, but then it clicked to me as I was working on it that this is meant for walls and surface bonding. So the fiberglass actually made a lot of sense. And later we can cut them out and they don't become such a big deal once it all dries up. And actually Modern Builds recommends that you use fire to burn these off, which I did not do before the sealant, but if I was to do this over again, I think I would try that method. I started off by just mixing the cement, and this was my first time mixing cement, so I just used a spare tub I had lying around, and then I kind of went off from there. Then we can jump into simply spreading it everywhere. I started off on one of the sides and I started adding cement. I think I could have made my layers a lot thicker, but I decided to go thinner for whatever reason. So I decided to just do one side, wait for it to dry, then flip it and do the next side. That's how I did it, because I didn't want to do this vertically, because it did kind of droop down when I tried to apply it vertically. So I just made sure that each surface was flat when I was adding it. Also, at this point, you kind of have to decide what texture you want to go with. I wanted to keep mine kind of smooth, but also a little bit rugged, so I kind of freehanded it all. I would say by far the trickiest part is the corners. My corners showed cracking later, which is fine. It's nothing terrible, and structurally it's fine, and I did cover it up a little bit extra later. But the corners do cause issues, so you have to be very careful about how you spread your cement on the corners. I've also read that keeping it hydrated while it's curing can really help prevent cracking in the future. So I think had I used more cement and had I sprayed it down with water as it was curing, I could avoid cracking. But the cracking is very small and not noticeable. And if you do notice, it kind of looks kind of cool. So now that I did the two sides, I move on to the top because I didn't want to put a side with cement that wasn't fully dry, flat yet. So I did two sides, then moved on to the top, and then I let it dry for a long time. As I did this project, I developed a lot of different little techniques that helped me save time. I always made sure to wear a glove, and I did like to spread a lot with my fingers. So I would definitely recommend you use gloves if you were to do this project. After I get the cement on the side, I just like to use this little flattener level piece. And one issue I had was that I bumped into the screws along the sides using this. I think had I used more cement, I wouldn't be hitting the screws and I would get more of a flat finish. And then I can just finally move on to my final side and apply the cement there. You really want to be careful with how much water you add. You don't want it to be too watery, and a little bit of water actually goes a long way, so just add a little bit of water, mix, and then go from there. And after all that, after letting it dry for a couple hours, it is done and it is cured. At this point, I did decide to sand the sides a little bit. This was a good way to get rid of the fiberglass hairs that were sticking out and smoothing out the surface. So I just took some 80 grit sandpaper and quickly did the edges. I think it is important to sand near the edges and corners so that then you get a more wrecked edge. After we sanded it and dusted it off, it is ready for the sealer. As I mentioned earlier, we're using Olympic WaterGuard waterproofer, and I just put it into an old bottle and I just used a paintbrush to spread it everywhere. So I just spread it everywhere as if it was paint. You want to really make sure that you get every area, and this will make your surfaces waterproof and longer lasting too. And there's no really right way to do this. The key is to just cover everywhere and make sure you don't miss any spots. I know some people use this with a sprayer outside, other people use rollers, but I found the paintbrush method to be pretty good. I was able to get into the little crevices and nooks, and I thought it was a great way to do this. So if you only have a paintbrush, that'll be totally fine. But if you have a different preferred way of doing this step in the process, by all means go and use that one instead. But if you only got a paintbrush, it'll do just fine. So just go around, make sure you cover all your surfaces and make sure that your surfaces are dust free. And that's it, we have our finished product. Now we just have to let it dry overnight so that it is fully cured. I really like how it looks at this point. You know, it added a lot of gloss and it looks really nice in my opinion. Now that we let it dry, we can finally do the water test. So to test that the sealant actually worked, we are gonna put a little bit of water on it and see if it soaks up or if it stays up top. So let's get a little bit of water on the side table. And as we can see, it just sits there. It does not sink into the cement, so our sealant did work and cured successfully. Now we can just grab a paper towel and dry it up with ease. And there we see it, it is all dry. And it works. So the bottom is a little rugged, so I'm going to add these felt pads so I can scoot it around my hardwood floors. I buy these big pieces and I just cut my own as needed. I also decided to double up on the pads because my cement extended a little bit past the frame and I didn't want the frame touching the ground, so I just doubled up on the felt pads to give it a little bit more height. I could have used anything else, but this is what I had to use here. Since this is cement and rock, if you try to scoot it on the ground, it will scratch your hardwood floors. So I definitely recommend you use some sort of pads or put it on carpet. And there we go, the cement side table is pretty much done. Now it's just time to put a little bit of decorations on it and show a little montage of what it looks like. So overall, I'm really happy with the look of it. I thought it would be a little darker. I thought it would look a little bit more like cement, but I actually do like this grayish color. I feel like it matches the already existing cement pillars on my walls that are painted white. And I really like the look. It's a very natural earth tone. It matches what I've got going on in my couch and my chairs. So I did like how it looked, but in the future I think I would try to experiment darkening it a little bit by using a cement coloring. I also would like to play with having a more rough edge. I think I made it very smooth, which is good, but I think it looks kind of cool when it's like roughed up. So I think I would try to play around and add some of those features as well. But overall I really liked how it looked. And I'm really pleased. The only downside is that it was very, very messy. I did this all indoors, which I actually wouldn't particularly recommend. Cement is super dusty, cutting is super dusty, there was dust everywhere. I spent a lot of my time sweeping and vacuuming. Even though I laid down tarps and I did all that stuff, I still had to do a lot of cleanup. So to avoid a lot of cleanup in the future, I would recommend doing this in a garage, basement, workshop, anything like that. Overall though, I'm very pleased with how it all turned out. I learned a lot of lessons about cement. This was my first time doing a cement project, even though I've been a fan of cement for a while. And I think I will do something in the future. I still have so much cement left over, so I feel like I have to do some fun crafts. So if you have any ideas of things I should do like that, please let me know. And if you have any other comments, questions, or compliments, please leave them in the comments below too. I try to reply to all of them. And also leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more of these videos in the future. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.